Former Trump legal advisor Jenna Ellis is taking a plea deal in connection with the election interference investigation out of Georgia. She's pleading out to one charge of aiding and abetting false statements and writings. And moments ago, she addressed the court. Let's play that.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Ellis.
All right, so joining us now with more analysis is CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. I mean, I don't know if I've heard anyone kind of openly say, I made a mistake. Anyone who's sort of been caught up in this Donald Trump stuff. And she mentioned being censured in Colorado. She was, and that was for essentially lying on, she was on Newsmax. She said that, that Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia combined, that we know that the election was stolen from President Trump, and we can prove that. And there was countless lawsuits, and none of that was ever proven. And obviously in Colorado, they concluded that she knew better. So what's your reaction to the plea deal?
My reaction is that this is fairly typical. We have now in short order seen 3 of the former president's former attorneys plead guilty. And there's no motivation to accepting a plea deal like looking to the left side, looking to the right side, and seeing that people you worked with are now taking these deals. I think ultimately this is not good for the former president. I think Trump wanted to be able to rely on a defense called assistance of counsel. And when you have 3 of your counsels pleading guilty to criminal violations, that becomes more complicated, to say the least. Mm-hmm. 2, I think Trump wanted a preview of Fani Willis's cases. And now that these plea deals are happening, these cases won't go to trial. He won't see that preview. And so I think that this is good news for the prosecution, and it has to feel rather ominous for the former president.
As we mentioned, this comes just days after the other 2 guilty pleas entered in by attorney Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesebro. Let's talk about the value of that testimony and what they might say. What kind of context, what kind of impact will that have on this case?
Well, I think the prosecution believes that the legal landscape truly has changed with respect to these 3 guilty pleas. So what can they provide? I think you're exactly right to zero in on what's helpful for the prosecution is that all 3 have said, I will testify in cases involving the other co-defendants. I believe now 15 other co-defendants. They've also agreed to provide any information that they already haven't to the prosecution. And let's remember that this Georgia case and the federal election case are very much overlapping. So what is helpful in Georgia could also be helpful to special counsel Jack Smith and his team in that federal election case. What specifically are we looking at here? I think we're looking at what the attorneys told the president, the former president, how he responded, what kind of information, again, was provided to him, and maybe some information about his state of mind. We have talked in the past about how I believe, given the charges, you do not have to show that the former president knew that he lost. You do have to show intent, but not as to the fact that he knew he was trying to steal an election, but as to other criminal elements of these charges. But again, I think that these guilty pleas, all of them, are people who are providing the former president with advice. They will be able to tell the jury what they said to him, the conversations that they had. That's going to be helpful to paint a picture to the jury and to help put meat on the bones of these prongs of the criminal code here.
And in regards to Jenna Ellis in particular, so her role in this is connected with this fake elector scheme and trying to encourage legislators to unlawfully appoint a set of pro-Trump electors. But she was also sort of in the room where it happened in some cases. She was at the White House with other lawyers. Like, she had details on what was being discussed. She's been openly critical of the president. She called him a malignant narcissist, basically, with a tendency to simply say that he's never done anything wrong. She complained about her legal fees and complained about the fact that he didn't just issue a blanket pardon to everyone on the way out. Like, she's really, really critical. But I wonder, Jessica, how often do defendants cop a plea, promise to testify, but then once they get on the stand, they're not necessarily an open book? How do you guarantee that they're going to, agree to the agreement in the plea?
So, Anne-Marie, actually, for all the reasons that you just laid out, that she's been very critical of the former president, I don't think it will be an issue for her. Now, when it comes to how do you ensure that they really do tell the truth, let's remember that they are under oath and that these plea deals can be revoked. And they are almost all have some language that indicates that basically prosecutors can unwind if the defendant doesn't adhere to the terms. And the terms are: provide us with a full accounting of what happened, provide us with all of the information you have, no ifs, ands, or buts, unless those carve-outs are part of the agreement. But what ensures that they're going to tell the truth? One, that it's under oath. Two, that they have a binding agreement with the prosecution that a judge has blessed, which will have consequences if they don't follow. Now, for all of these particular witnesses, are they perfect witnesses for the prosecution? No, but there are no perfect witnesses. They all have agreed that they committed crimes. That's what happens a lot with respect to witnesses for the prosecution. And prosecutors throughout the country every day in courtrooms across America rehabilitate these witnesses and say to the jurors, I know that they did something wrong, but it doesn't mean they're lying now. Let's talk about why they wouldn't have any motivation to lie and admit that they did things that were wrong. And then they'll point to the former president and others and that they did things wrong as well.
Sure. Yeah. And on that point, it's this, are there potential questions about attacks on their credibility, given what you just said in the public statements that she has made in recent months that can be very damaging?
Or Donald Trump, the public attacks that he's immediately made on people like Sidney Powell. Like, right away, he wasted no time.
When it comes to former co-defendants that essentially flip and take plea deals, there will always be credibility questions. This is very common. I mean, there's a corollary here to a lot of people remember another one of the former president's former attorneys, Michael Cohen, who was convicted of federal crimes and then ended up providing very helpful information against Trump. So you don't get to conjure up the perfect witness who has had no background and no criminal problems. You get the witnesses as they come. And this is, again, very common. And I think jurors understand that people commit unlawful acts, criminal acts, but then when they walk into that courthouse and they're in that witness box and they're testifying under oath and the prosecution is saying, did you agree to this? Did you agree to this? Then I think jurors are able to see that people are complicated and that you can believe some of what they provide while acknowledging that they're not completely innocent actors.
I know you don't have a crystal ball, but any idea, or what's your best guess as to how many of these defendants will actually go to trial?
More, which is an easy answer only because most cases, as we've talked about, most cases don't go to trial. It's risky for both sides. The prosecution always has to prove, as we now know from talking about this for a while, that prosecution has to show proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to get a unanimous verdict. Even if you have fantastic evidence, there's always risk involved. And the prosecution is going to think about, what do they want in a case like this? Let's remember, this is a RICO case. That is a criminal statute that's often used in organized crime situations. And what often happens in those cases is that you kind of work your way up and in from people like attorneys who assisted maybe the key players, like in this case, the former president. So it's a little bit psychological in the sense that people see, okay, now there are 3 guilty pleas and they're going to be going to the prosecution asking what might be on the table for them. It's also legal in the sense that people are realizing that they can get out of jail, that all of these plea deals involve no jail time. These deals have been, I believe, mutually beneficial, and I think that we will see more for the reasons we just discussed.
Jessica Levinson, thank you very much.
Thank you.